me move away from the budgets and the fiscal situation and talk to you about the spate of ordinances that have been issued by this government. 8 since you took office. Was the ordinance route more a message to investors who were perhaps getting a bit impatient that this government was not being able to deliver on the reform agenda, given the fact that it enjoys the kind of political majority? Or was it a message being sent out to the opposition? Who were you trying to send out the message to? Because the ordinance will have to go to Parliament anyway.
First of all, an ordinance is not an extra parliamentary process. An ordinance has to go to Parliament. It has to be approved by both houses of Parliament, either individually or eventually collectively. Now, I am willing to discuss each of these ordinances. The coal ordinance has already been approved by the Lok Sabha. The Rajya Sabha was not allowed to function, so the coal ordinance was required. The insurance ordinance has gone through a standing committee of Parliament. After the standing committee, the Rajya Sabha decided to have a select committee. Now, many people, purely on a question of political theory, an indirect house questioning what the two houses have collectively cleared through a standing committee, and what a directly elected house has cleared, to say that we wish to review it. Now, you can do it in a rare case, but it's not a very healthy precedent on a question of political theory and for the system. That if you have a system where an indirectly elected house starts questioning a directly elected house every day, then questions relating to the larger concept of democracy are involved. So after it's been cleared by the select committee, the stand is we won't allow Parliament to proceed.
Right.
Now, one of the investors came and met, not an investor in the insurance sector, but head of a financial institution. And in the course of a discussion, he asked me a question about retrospective taxation. And I said it was a bad moment for India. He said, no, sir, there were 2 bad moments for India. The first was retrospective taxation. But many people ask me, why should we invest in a country which takes 10 years and still can't decide what its insurance law is going to be? Now, are we going to be crippled by these kind of factors? The constitutional position is very clear. One house clears it, the other house has to consider it. It's entitled to reject it, then both the houses jointly consider it. I've learned a lesson from a mistake my predecessor made. And the mistake was that he introduced the insurance bill in the Rajya Sabha.
Right.
And therefore, if the first house says, I'll hold on till the cows come home, then it doesn't even go to the joint session. So the insurance which has been cleared by committees of both houses, which has been cleared by the select committee of the Rajya Sabha, we won't allow it to proceed. And why will we not allow it to proceed? Because one political party has an ideological issue. The other political parties agreed because some of its members were involved in some chit fund problem, and therefore the House can't proceed. Now, frankly, the country can't pay for this image merely because some parties have this problem. This is a government which after 30 years has got a clear mandate. We have a mandate in the directly elected house. We have a mandate in the two houses taken together. And there is no reason why we should not be able to clear the legislation. So the insurance will go into the Lok Sabha and then it will proceed as per the constitutional requirement. Now, if you see the next legislation, which is the next important legislation, if I may point out, which has come through an ordinance, is the land law.
Right.
Now, on the eve of elections, you come out with a law which singularly has a potential to stall India's growth. Now, I always said that I have no difficulty with enhanced compensation. Some people may be having a problem, but you can't have an impossible procedure. And I made up my mind, not as finance minister, but for a brief period that I was a defense minister, when we needed land for India's nuclear installations. And I suddenly realized that even defense and national security was not an exempted purpose. Now, a law of this kind, somebody who drafted it thought it will bring them votes, it didn't. But at the same time, India cannot be made to suffer. So those procedures have to be
If I may interrupt you here, sir, why did the BJP support a bill when you very clearly articulate you thought that this is an anti-growth bill, it was an anti-India bill? Why did the BJP support a bill?
That's the view I always had. But let me tell you, the onus of responsibility for bringing responsible legislation is always on the government. But if on the eve of election a government goes on a path which is highly populist but suicidal, then don't expect the opposition at that time to say, well, I am willing to sacrifice votes on the eve of elections. Therefore, when governments embark on a particular agenda which is populist but could be extremely difficult and challenging for the economy, then the responsibility for this comes on the government, not on the opposition. Now, you don't expect an opposition to say, well, I am going to oppose all these legislations even if they cost me votes. At the same time, when you get an opportunity, you logically go ahead, and I've been writing about it, I've been speaking about it, and I am still to see, except a populist kind of a response, I'm still to see a logical response to the arguments which have been raised. Now, each of the exempted purposes that I've provided is something which is going to help rural India. Industrial corridors running along highways, they develop villages on both sides of the land. Rural infrastructure. Now, none of these is an exempted purpose. Now, how do you expect India to grow if you say that nothing will be available?
Fair point, sir. You're preaching to the converted in this room.
I must tell you, day before yesterday, I was at the West Bengal Global Conference.
Did you manage to broker truce with Mamata Banerjee, sir?
Of course. You know, I have a very comfortable relationship with her. But she did, and her finance minister very proudly introduced me to people who were setting up private universities, people who were setting up hospitals, people who were setting up hotels. Now, I'm mentioning these three purposes. And they said this will all help us to grow. And then I asked somebody there, not publicly, and I am asking it publicly now, then why support a provision in the Land Acquisition Act which says no acquired land will be used for a university or a hospital? Now, how do you expect us to set up smart cities where there is, besides a government hospital, there is no private hospital, there is no private university, no educational institution? Now, you have provisions in this act which are, for instance, take a provision. Any land which is not built on for 5 years will be returned back. So I have said in my blog that do you want India to be a country of incomplete projects? Can a city be fully developed in 5 years? Can a power project, an irrigation project, a national highway, a railway line be developed and completed within 5 years? Even a business center doesn't get completed within 5 years. So whatever is there for the first 5 years will remain. The rest, again, you'll have agriculture all around.
So what should we expect as far as the ordinance is concerned in the budget session, sir? Are we likely to see a joint session right at the start of the budget session to push all of the ordinances through?
No, that is not the constitutional provision. Our endeavour will be to go to both houses of parliament, the Lok Sabha first, thereafter the upper house, have it cleared by both houses of parliament. I have not the least doubt that some of these are going to be cleared. Coal, for instance. What was happening since 2006? Coal being allotted through private parties for mining or for assigning to politically connected people and so on. But by a discretionary process. So you already had private sector mining, but through a corrupt means, a discretionary purpose. All we've done is to institutionalize it, to say that please do it by an auction. We'll first allocate it to the state sector companies, we'll then auction it to the actual users, and thereafter we'll consider if there is a commercial mining involved. Now, we've exactly done what was going on since 2006, except that we've institutionalized the process. Instead of doing it by a discretionary method, do it by an auction. And who gets the money?
The state governments.
No, either the consumers benefit or the state governments. Now, I would like to see Orissa, West Bengal, Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, or the West Bengal MPs to come up and say, my state is going to get the auction money from coal. Earlier it was not. I am still going to oppose this ordinance.
So before I get the jury in, let me ask you a question in terms of the outlook as far as growth is concerned. How confident do you feel that 2015 is going to be a better year as far as the GDP growth and the economy is concerned? And how significantly is growth going to be linked to the possibility of an aggressive interest rate cut?
Well, now you're again looking for headlines.
That's our job.
Obviously, these things are interconnected. 2015 is going to be much better than the growth in the earlier years, though not fully satisfactory, because there's a lot of legacy of the past. Regrettably, reforms in 2015 have also meant clearing up the mess left behind in the last few years.
Sure.
Because a lot of these decisions, correcting the Land Acquisition Act, correcting the defective coal allocation process, improving on the mining law, these are all really clearing up the mess which was left behind. And therefore 2015 will be better. The next year certainly will be much better. And hopefully with the inflation substantially under control, we hope to see a better tomorrow as far as the rates are concerned, and that's also going to help, because ultimately, and this goes to your first question which I didn't answer, what is going to be the road ahead? Investment, infrastructure, manufacturing.
Yeah.
And therefore, rates are going to be an important factor in all this.